Hello everyone and welcome. A couple minutes before the live stream starts, so thank you all so much for joining. If you are here early, hang on. We will get started shortly. Got a fun thing to talk about tonight. Let's see here. I am not able to see the chat. I may need to use my phone to see the chat, so let's see. Good times. I can't see the chat. Welcome everyone. We will get started in just a second. Got about to go. I want to thank you all so much for joining. We have a very fun episode tonight. We'll be talking about some of my favorite technology. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about it. Chat GPT, so no pun intended. Already starting out with the corny jokes. It's going to be a great night. Hey, Iron Chariot, thank you so much for joining. Great to see you. I'm going to be using an alternate way to view my chats as we go through this, so still working on the technology. This is what happens when you become a PM. You just absolutely lose any capability of working with technology. So, but I'm very excited. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see you. All right, 7 o'clock it is. Well, welcome everyone, friends, family, fellow and future leaders. Thank you so much for joining Fed PM Pro tonight. My name is Jim O'Keefe, and I'll be your host as we go through some fun discussions about some new technologies. As many of you know, I kind of do these podcasts and streams usually about once a week, so you'll get notifications about them. I try to open up discussions about how it is to be a PM, what it means to be a PM, experiences that I've had, maybe suggestions for how you could become a Fed PM. It's a unique, challenging, and fun experience, so I want to help anybody that I can with questions and things about how it is to be a kind of a program manager. I've been a program manager for 20 years, so I've had a lot of fun and good times, met a lot of wonderful people, had a great opportunity to work with incredible customers. So hopefully we can use this to learn together, and if I can share information that helps you on your journey, then all the better. So thank you so much for joining and taking the time to be with us. So today's topic is Chat GPT. So as many of you have probably heard this floating around, so let me go to our PowerPoint. Some ground rules before we get started. Again, please be nice in the comments, and if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them about anything. I'll try to stick with the planned information, but if there's a different direction that you want to go, or you've got an important question that you'd like to work through, then I would love to have that conversation with you. So please feel free to reach out and put a question in the chat. I am monitoring it, so if you see me looking down here, that's what I'm doing. So thank you all again so much for joining. Again, please be nice. There may be bots that show up. There's all these, many of you have been on live streams before. I will try to get them out of there as quickly as possible, but bear with me as we go through the process. So thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Steve, for joining. It's great to see all of you. Again, these videos and live streams are mine. They don't relate to any customer or company or anything. So the words and ideas that are put out in these things are definitely just my own. So appreciate that. Also, still reserve the right to kind of avoid certain questions that come up. I generally am not going to talk about specifics related to any previous customers, business, or contracts or things like that, or agencies. But I'm happy to talk in generalities about my experience. So looking forward to talking to you about all these different things as we continue to do these each Thursday night. Generally, the plan is Thursday evenings at 7. So if you get an opportunity to join, it would be wonderful to see you stop by. Okay, so tonight's discussion is Chat GPT. So what is it? Right? If you have some experience with it, you've probably, it's all over the news. And particularly if you're in the tech spaces, everyone's talking about what it is. It's essentially a large language model that was developed by OpenAI, which started out as a kind of nonprofit, and now it's a for-profit business. It has tons of investment from Microsoft, as you've probably heard. And even the latest is that Microsoft is going to include it embedded in their Office suite, which is going to be absolutely mind-boggling, and you'll see why in just a little bit. So it's here to stay. So that's this kind of movement and how quick this stuff is going is why I wanted to go ahead and do this live stream about this now, is because we really do need to be aware. It's coming for us. You can't escape. But that's okay, because we can work with it before it takes over and becomes our overlords. But so what I want to do tonight is kind of give you an overview of what ChatGPT is, talk about some examples and reasons why you might want to use it. I am using it a lot of times to replace my Google searches now. Use it every day, and it has helped me do at least one thing a day for at least the past, probably month. So it is that good, and it can be used to improve your productivity and make things easier for your day-to-day operations. So definitely something to think about. So it's trained. So ChatGPT it's kind of like a chatbot. But so much more. And it's trained to respond and generate human-like text. So you provided an input prompt, which is like a question, and you can talk to it like a normal person. It is perfectly fine with kind of nuanced conversational speech. It doesn't have a problem responding to that. We'll do some demos in a little bit so you can see, kind of what's going on. So it's a game changer. We'll have a lot of fun doing that. It's trained on a huge data set. There's a lot of controversy. I will have a slide on that too. But it's books, articles. It scrapes the internet and it grabs an enormous amount of information. There are, I think it's now hundreds of millions of parameters that it uses to generate. There's discussions about billions of parameters that it might use to generate information as it responds to prompts. So it's just growing and growing. Also, just as an aside, the current ChatGPT is off of, and it's generative pre-transformed. What is it? Yeah, I don't remember the acronym. But anyway, GPT-3 is the current iteration that's powering ChatGPT. And interestingly, the data is actually fairly out of date. So I think it's got data that's missing maybe the last year or two. So it's only trained on data up to a couple of years ago. So it's not completely current. So if you ask it current questions, a lot of times it won't be able to respond. And we'll get to some of the challenges and problems, but it is a massive data set. And it's also like you can use, and this is one of the use cases we'll talk about, is you can actually grab, the capability in the algorithm and train it on your own data sets. So this is why it's important for us as PMs to think about this, because eventually you may be able to pull this algorithm and capability out and tune it. They call it tuning the algorithm around a data set that is yours specifically. And that's huge, because then you can do all kinds of really creative things and you don't have to worry about some of the challenges that I'll mention in the next slide. So very cool. And that's just going to continue to evolve. So again, language translation and content creation we'll get to. It's just incredible. But what is it? What are we worried about with ChatGPT? So if you've been listening lately, so there's been a real big discussion around AI and things like artists and the generation of images and things like that. So if you've heard of DALL-E 2, if you've heard of Stable Diffusion, Mid-Journey, those are some of the big ones that generate images from prompts that you put into the system. And those things are also trained on millions of images that have been scraped off the internet. And so a lot of the discussion around this is whether there's copyright infringement and whether or not the data set that it was trained on is open source and free, or there's entire videos on the legal nuances of that. But that's related primarily to image generation. It hasn't quite gotten into Chat GPT. So if you hear those things, be aware that there's a lot of that going on. So what are some of the concerns about Chat GPT specifically? Hey, C Snappy, so good to see you. Oh, it's Jamie Rose. How you doing, dear? Great to see you. Thank you all so much for joining. So caveats about ChatGPT. Okay, so you'll hear a lot of folks come out and say a lot of these things, and I'm just going to be upfront. In the long term, a lot of this is not going to matter because this technology is actually here and it's going to continue to grow. It is important that we address these issues, but again, it shouldn't stop you from learning about this and starting to utilize technology, because no matter what, it's coming. It's going to either be, we're either going to experience it in our daily lives, on our mobile devices, in our homes, or at work, and particularly for those that are in these leadership roles like PMs and things like that. They're tools that you just absolutely have to be aware of. And I will say this, even in the federal space, there are questions that are being asked about this. So people are becoming aware, and they'll be more aware as time goes on. So a couple things. So ChatGPT a lot of times lacks context, okay? So it doesn't really have the ability to understand the context in which it is being used. So it can provide and what I mean by that is, you may ask it questions and it may respond inappropriately or provide irrelevant responses because it may not be exactly sure, what you're asking and how you're asking it and how it relates to the world in general. So it's not intelligent. Right? It is using algorithms to generate the output. So it can really mess up. It can be absolutely, completely wrong. And one of the things you'll hear about it is it can be wrong and be wildly confident about it. A lot of times, and this is, if you've ever sat with me for long enough, you'll hear I do the same thing. I sound wildly confident about knowing nothing whatsoever. The ChatGPT can be worse. It can actually act like it has the perfect answer for you, speak in absolutely confident language, and it can be absolutely and completely wrong. So bear that in mind, because again, it's still being fine-tuned. There's a lot of work that needs to be done around what it was trained on and how it responds in certain situations. So don't panic on that. They are continuing to work on that, but definitely take Chat GPT with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it's not designed to give you absolute factual responses. But what it can do is what I'll show you in a bit. That is the real value for right now. It's not Google it and get the right answer. It's asking it to provide instructions or asking it to write for you, and we'll talk about some of those options. And you then have to edit and evaluate the content that comes out. You can't just copy and paste it and get it on its way, because it could be terribly wrong in the data that it spits out. So the other piece is bias. So if you're scraping the internet, you can imagine, God help us, we know where the internet has gone, but it's only as unbiased as the data that it was trained on. Now, it wasn't trained on, like the entire internet, but even a subset, no matter what, if it's generated by humans, there could be some unconscious bias. There can be absolutely conscious and intentional bias that can be in the information that it is using to train on. And that can come out in a bias in the model. So they're still working. That is a whole, area of AI research that they're going into to try to, be better at taking out these biases, and it's a tough one. That's a tough one, no doubt. So again, be careful about what you're reading and make sure that you're, if you are using some of the content, then be sure to update it and edit it, and make sure that it's consistent and it's non-biased and it's, professional, responsible, and it's relevant and it's not inappropriate. All of those things you're going to need to do with the information that gets spit out. So please do take a look at that. Misinformation, you heard me mention earlier, can be completely wrong, and it can inadvertently spread the information as if it knows what it's talking about. We might be able to get it to do it. Just be aware of that. The information that comes out, you don't really want to use it to give you specific facts and then use those facts as specifically correct, right? Because it's going to mess up, and you just have to take it with a grain of salt. So always check your sources. Always make sure that you verify the stuff that it spits out. Privacy concerns. This was the issue that I was mentioning about with a lot of the information around the artists and stuff. It was accessing potentially copyrighted works, things like that. But this is also potentially using data that might have been inadvertently released and could be personal or private, and it can use those pieces of information to train the model. It's a lot of data, so they still need to look at that and make sure that that is something that they're trying to address. So because it's so complicated, and this is the part that's scary, so you may have heard it described as kind of a black box. So when it spits out the data that it spits out, it is, like I mentioned, literally using millions or billions of parameters that it has learned on while being trained over billions, millions of iterations on how to create a sentence and how to spit it out. So a lot of times it's really hard to get underneath the hood, or get inside the box, so to speak, and see exactly what it's doing. How did it come up with that answer, right? A lot of times you're not going to be able to do that, and that can be terrifying because, in a lot of cases with computer programs, you wrote the instructions that it was supposed to follow, so you had a great idea. In a lot of these cases, you may not have any idea what it's doing. It may be spitting out stuff that is, wild and completely wrong, and you may not be able to get to the bottom of why it's doing that. It could be a training model error. It could be anything. Any of the millions of kind of parameters that could be off, causing the errors. So it can also be used for bad things. Just about anything can. So as a funny side, this entire slide, this data, without any changes, was written by Chat GPT. I asked it, what are the problems with Chat GPT? I actually asked the model, and it spit this out. So I want you to see that, and again, you check it with multiple sources. It's right on. It hit every one of the ones that are most of the videos that I've been watching over the past couple months. So it's extremely good in certain situations. But I wanted to show you this because this is one of the examples of the ways you could use it. So let's talk about that next. Like, if you're a PM, how can you use Chat GPT? What can it be used for? So there's kind of a list of like I highlighted it from mundane and boring, but helpful, to things that are maybe even more helpful and specific, and then also things that might be specialized that it can do down the line. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then some absolutely bonkers options on the next slide that we'll talk about as well. So, for example, this would be a situation where, when you start adding some of the AI technologies together, that's when it gets really wild and scary. So many of us have used, systems that can record your voice and do voice to text transcriptions, and it's getting much, much, much better. I mean, even a couple of years ago, it was a pain to deal with it because it would still mess up stuff. Now, if you have a good one, a good program that is usually have to pay for those, but they're better at hearing your voice. You train it longer, and it gets very few of your words incorrect or fails to hear what you're saying and get it down. So anyway, in those kinds of situations where you do voice to text, it creates a transcription that then you could then use and literally copy and paste into Chat GPT and ask it to do like a summarization of it. Like, hey, give me 10 bullets of this content so that I can send it out to my team. And it will do that. And it could be hours of conversation. I'm not kidding when I say that. I have ingested pages of information into Chat GPT and asked it to summarize it, and it does it like that. It is near real time. A couple things that are interesting too, I'll just put an aside in here. When it first came out and I first started using it, it was faster, it was more open in its responses, and you could generally input more information into it before asking it to respond. they've slowly closed it down a little bit, right? Because people actually went off the rails like you expect them to when it first came out. They were doing things like asking it how to build a Molotov cocktail. I'm not kidding. And it would give them step-by-step instructions. So they had to obviously rein this stuff to keep the model from giving out potentially incredibly dangerous information. So they're reining in some of the parameters about how it can be used, and that also includes how much data you can dump into it and get to summarize. But down the line, if you have this as part of a Microsoft Word application, you could literally have it summarize your entire document. It could be pages and pages, and put it into a bulleted list. And I'll show you how it does that because it is bonkers. All right. So email responses, like if you have standard email responses that you need to generate, you can enter in information in Chat GPT, like write me an email response for thanking a customer for buying my products. I sell things like electronics on Amazon, and you can then have it generate an email that you can actually use over and over again. Same thing for a program manager. If you have to generate responses that are in regularly happening, like that can be generic, you have it do that. Also, and this sounds terrible, you can help it write things like recommendation letters, evaluations of a person's performance. You can ask it to help you with notes on, thanking people for a gift, or thanking a colleague for, doing a particular presentation. All of these things you can use ChatGPT to start the process. In a lot of cases, it'll write almost the entire thing without any editing required. It is that insane. But of course, make sure you always edit and always take a look at it before you send it. Content generation. So if you need to create like promotional material or marketing, or like this, I created that previous slide completely from ChatGPT. I asked it to tell me what are the concerns with ChatGPT, and it literally spit it out, and I could copy and paste it directly in. That's the kind of stuff that it can generate. But like, for example, if you're doing marketing or you're doing things like social media posts, you can literally have it like, hey, I wrote this really cool email, but I'd like to summarize it and then spit it over into LinkedIn or Twitter or something like that. It can create these social media posts, and you can ask it to summarize an email or information that you have, and then you can actually ask it to morph that information, and we'll show you some examples of that. You can ask it to write in the style of a 6-year-old, and it will take out big technical jargon, and it can simplify it so that it's maybe easier just to spit it out to something like Twitter or to the masses without worrying about any confusion with technical nomenclature. It's amazing. Language translation. So you can actually, like Google Translate is amazing today, and many of you have seen, like, you can actually walk around, type stuff in it, and then you can have it speak to someone. This does the same thing. You can take an entire transcript of stuff, and you can automatically have it generated in a different language. And again, now this is where you got to be really careful. If you don't know that language, be really careful about sending stuff out. But this is the stuff. It'll get better and better as it goes along. Really specialized stuff, and this is coming down the pike. And the reason I'm putting this out here is because as PMs, these are the kinds of things that's going to help us, do and work with, is things like project planning. So, you're going to be able to put in, and I'll even show you how it can create a general project plan. But it can generate a template day. So literally, if you say, generate a project plan for, opening a restaurant, and it'll put out, information about how you might open a restaurant and some ideas and suggestions that'll at least get you an outline of the kinds of things that you may want to enter. It can also do things like business plans. You can ask it to generate a business plan about a new business you're doing. You can also ask it to say, I'm interested in an IT-based project. This is something I would be interested in. Tell me what are the major steps that you need to be concerned about when you're doing an IT project. And it's going to go through things like budget and milestones and schedule and personnel. It's incredible the way it spits out these things. So even if you're not sure, like, it can just generate that content because, and this is the biggest thing, and I think all would agree, it is way easier to edit than to create, right? That you'll hear this all over the place. It's like, it takes, if one of the biggest challenges when people are like, when you need like a technical person to generate content, the hardest thing for them to do is put the content down. If I have content and I ask them to edit it, it's much quicker. So in situations like this, you can actually do stuff like that where you can say, oh, here's the outline. I just need you to fill it in, so go through and answer these questions, and you can do stuff like that. So it's incredibly good for doing things like potentially, helping you with project plans, project management related stuff like I need it. Now, it can't do things like a Gantt chart yet. But trust me, that's coming. So yeah, they're going to integrate it into, you're going to have it in Microsoft Project. So just what you can do with it in there. Predictive analytics and stuff. This is stuff AI has done for a while, particularly if you're in the IT space. You'll be very familiar with this, where it can predict trends that are coming up if you spit in data. So now this is where I want to talk about why this is specialized. So the idea is that you could take that algorithm and you could have a data set of your own. And that might be like, all right, I'm going to use the IT example. If you took, all the tickets that, an IT call center has received, and you can dump them into this, and also in real time, it can continue to feed this system. It can begin to predict trends and look at stuff and understand. And a lot of the systems that are out there today do this. This isn't too whiz bang, but the advantage is that you can apply it to just your specific data set, and it can help you, with your environment, and it can predict trends around things like failures in your space that you need to kind of keep an eye out for. So those are really specialized. And again, this is coming. It's just a matter of time before you're able to so. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft is on board completely with Chat GPT, and it'll be embedded in all its products. But like, for example, if you wanted to stand up an Azure environment from Microsoft in a secured environment already, you can then put something like this OpenAI Chat GPT element into that secure environment, and then ingest your data. A lot of the things that the AI can do is ingest what's called unstructured data, which means you don't have to have a particular type of data. You just literally point it to a directory and it just ingests the entire contents. Because again, the algorithm doesn't necessarily care if it's a Word document or if it's an Excel spreadsheet. It's literally going to break it down to its individual elements and ingest it that way and do the training on your specialized data set. And again, how it does it, so I will put the caveat again here. I have no idea how it does all of this. I'm not an AI expert. I should have probably said that up front. I've watched hours and hours and hours of content, read a bunch of papers and blogs and things like that around AI, but trust me, there are probably many of you that know way more about the inner workings of how this stuff goes. But again, it would be really beneficial if you don't, to at least understand how to access it, what the capabilities are, and be ready, because it's gonna knock the socks off of a lot of people. They're already Chat GPT 4 is basically ready to go. That'll be the next iteration, and people that have had a look at it are just saying it's transformative. Like, it is insane where the steps are going, because you start to hear that these models are not just getting better linearly, they're getting better faster and faster and faster. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Who knows whether that's going to tail off and whether it's going to chill out or whether it's going to continue. Good to be aware of this stuff and able to use it. So, all right, some of the bonkers ideas. Okay, so these are from videos I've watched of people. So it can generate code in multiple languages, and I don't mean like French and English. I mean like in Python or in C++, and it can generate, or JavaScript. I mean, you can ask it to write code to do a specific thing in a specific language, and it can generate that code. Now, will the code be perfect? No, but I've seen it work. So, I mean, literally first time work. And it will generate the code. It will also generate the descriptions of what the code is doing during the steps. And if you then take that code and copy it out and put it into your environment, that like you take the Python code and you run it, if it spits out errors, then you can take the errors and put it back into Chat GPT and ask it to fix the error. And then it can give you another option for the code. You come back and you put it in there and basically do the have it run it again, and if it errors again, put the error back in Chat GPT and it can help you. I watched people program entire they were able to create I think they built a text box from scratch that would place Chat GPT on a website and allow you to interact with it. and it did everything. I mean, they literally copied the code over, and it was able to create the website in their domain and do all of this, and they ran it, and there were like 2 or 3 errors total, and the thing generated the code like that. Now, it does error, but the fact that it can do any of this is insane, and the fact that it can explain it to you is even crazier. So programmers are losing their minds. Now, the other thing is that the way I would say industry is going is it's trying to move towards what they call low code or no code types of environments. And what that means is that anybody that goes in and tries to use this environment can access and be productive immediately. They don't have to go and learn a programming code and then come back in and type out the code. A lot of times it might have a GUI or graphic user interface where you can kind of point and click and select stuff, and it can write the code behind the scenes for you. That's where a lot of this is going. So imagine that you have somebody that is in a call center for you, and they are asked a question that would normally have to go to a programmer or a developer way up the chain, and that might be 2 or 3 times as expensive, and that call center person is able to type in the thing and ask for the code and spit it out and send it to the user, and it work fairly well, or they can test it on their own machine and then send it out. I mean, these are the kinds of things you got to think about as a PM today. You need to figure out how to integrate this technology into anything and everything that you're doing. Particularly for me, because I'm in the IT space, it touches everything. But even if you're doing things like, especially if you're doing things like cyber, it's going to be a nightmare. Just to be real, right? There's a lot of cyber questions around this. Because it's trained on external data sets and because it touches the internet, sometimes there's going to be a lot of discussion around security and making sure that if you have this thing deployed in a federal environment, it's going to need to be locked down. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to need to happen in that space in particular. But the other cool thing is that they'll also be able to use this, and are using it today, to find exploits and to basically do penetration testing, and it can even getting back to codes, it can for example run code and find issues in it. You can put the code into Chat GPT, it can try to run it itself. There was one situation where the guy was able to create a operating system within Chat GPT and have it run a program within an operating system it created within Chat GPT. You cannot make this stuff up. So like this kind of stuff is coming. So in any domain and realm that you're in today, just think about how this could be used, and we'll go through some examples. Also, while I'm finishing up this, if you have a question that you want me to ask Chat GPT live, give it to me and I'll put it in and we'll see what happens. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I will go through a couple of examples so you can kind of see the kinds of things that it'll spit out. The last one on the list, this was amazing. So I watched a guy that was a network technician. So he was an expert in IT technology. So when I say something like configure a Cisco switch, that's a Cisco piece of IT equipment. And Cisco is the brand, and they develop large enterprise level IT equipment. And it can be complicated to configure those pieces of equipment. And so what this network engineer asked ChatGPT to do was tell me how to configure and connect this piece of IT equipment into a network. And it spit out the code specific to Cisco and would need to be entered into the piece of equipment to get it to do what he needed it to do. He tested it live on a piece of equipment, and it ran, and it did what he needed it to do. And it's some fairly complicated stuff. I won't go into the IT elements of it, but it was not basic stuff. It was able to do pretty complicated elements of connecting that piece of IT equipment into a network and getting it to communicate and making sure it was secured, all kinds of stuff. So it was pretty impressive. So again, getting back to these kinds of things, think about how you could use it today, and I'd love to see that. So if you have any questions, again, put them in the chat, and I'm happy to ask our insane friend here, ChatGPT, what's going on. So I'll go to my full screen, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull up ChatGPT live, and we'll see what happens, and I'll show you some examples of things that I've done on here. But also I wanted to mention there are the other AI capabilities that exist out there. These other things like the DALL-E 2 and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion that do the graphics pieces. Those are only going to get better. And imagine integrating them with something like Chat GPT, because today, so for example, you can ask Chat GPT to create a prompt that you would then put into, something like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion and have it create an image for you. And so Chat GPT understands the prompt structure for these different types of technologies and can tell you what to put in to try to get to the output that you're looking for. So it's incredible that they're already, kind of quasi interacting. But what I'll do is I'll show you real quick. So this is our GPT interface, and let me first go to one example of an emerging technology for you here, and this is called DALL-E. And I just want to mention it because this is really, really, really hot off the presses. So you heard me talk earlier about the text-to-speech kind of stuff, and many of us have heard, the robotic voice of it trying to, of a YouTube video that's done by a text-to-speech, kind of robotic voice, and how obnoxious those can sound. Okay, that's going to change dramatically and very soon. So DALL-E is basically going to be a Microsoft capability, and that is essentially a text-to-speech synthesis. Okay, the word. It could say it better than I could. Text-to-speech synthesis, a TTS, and you'll start hearing these more and more. So again, just another note to yourself: these synthesizers are going to become a huge deal. And all I wanted to show you about it, don't worry about the model, but if you get a chance to listen to these, it gives some examples, and I don't think you'll be able to hear them here, but if you go to this DALL-E demo website up here at the top, you'll be able to hear them. So they have examples. The baseline is what it sounds like today when you have that kind of robotic voice sound that comes through, and then you'll be able to hear what DALL-E is able to do. And it is mind-boggling how accurate it is. Now, the thing that'll blow your mind is that for many of us, if you've ever had to train a text-to-speech program, you know that it can take a while. Like, it wants to hear you talk into it for an hour. This is able to do it off of 3 seconds of recorded data of your voice, and it's able to mimic emotion and mimic your voice to such an insane degree that it's a little terrifying. But the idea being that, well, okay, if you wanted to train something like this to answer telephones and it was connected to Chat GPT on the background, then this thing could answer a telephone and say, hello, what is your problem? And the person on the other end would think, oh, this is a human, I'll ask it a question. It then takes that information, spits it back to Chat GPT, gets an answer back, and then speaks it right back to you. This stuff is coming. I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's not going to be like the please press 1 to do this kind of stuff anymore. It's going to be, you're just talking to it like I am talking to you all today, and it's able to respond and give you answers and fix stuff for you immediately. So anyway, cool sidebar here is now this text-to-voice synthesis elements that are connected. If you connect those with like Chat GPT and you connect Chat GPT to something like DALL-E 2 or Midjourney, now you have an entire incredible domain of AI tools at your disposal. And I will say this, if you are on social media, you probably heard of something like Avatar AI. Or there was some other ones like where everybody was posting their image in their picture that was created by AI to look something, whether it might be, you look like a cartoon or you look like something else, but these are incredible drawings. You could have a lifelike photorealistic version of yourself that basically is almost indistinguishable from a picture. Those kinds of things, if they're all interconnected and these applications start getting put on things like mobile devices, which is already happening, then you're going to have capabilities in the palm of your hand that are going to be absolutely mind-boggling. So keep that in mind. So you're going to have voice, you're going to have optical recognition, all of that stuff is going to be coming, because it was interesting. I listened to a video today that talks about how we as humans, most of our information is gleaned from our eyes. We get information from all of our senses, but a huge amount of information is gleaned from our eyes. One of the things that they're working on, as is things like, self-driving cars that use things like radar or just literally video now to identify things in a picture, and they're able to do that incredibly effectively now. It's kind of amazing. But as that continues to increase and get better and better and better, then think about the implications of being able to take a picture and say something like, hey, can you identify what this is in this photograph? And Chat GPT or something like it is able to spit out explanations of you're looking at the Rocky Mountains, or here's some information about this particular type of shirt that this person's wearing, and by the way, probably here's an ad on how to buy it, those kinds of things. So those things are coming. But anyway, I wanted to show you Valley too, so you at least have that information for you. Okay. So, let's see. I'm checking the chat. Oh, that's a good question. So hello to and thank you, Steve and Snappy and Iron Chariot. So let's ask it about, let's see. So Steve had a good one. Oh, is it all open source? Okay, so some of it is. OpenAI is not. My understanding of where it's going, again, I'm not an expert, but basically what it seems like is it is going to be licensable. And it's interesting, and as you all dig into this, particularly if you are, like a PM and responsible for buying some of this stuff, they use these things, they charge it in units called tokens, which are not necessarily like word-based. They're almost pieces of words and things like that. So they have this calculation method for calculating different kinds of costs related to pieces of words. So there's a lot of stuff going on there as far as the pricing goes. So no, I don't anticipate it being open source. And I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but if this is incorporated into Bing, we might be Binging instead of Googling pretty soon. But there will be things like that where it's incorporated into your Office suite and you have access to it. But for example, if you wanted your own domain and you wanted to have it for your own particular business, you're going to have to license it, and it's going to cost money, and they're going to make a lot of money on it. So that's a great question. Text to speech did sound like a drunken Swede. I like that. Yeah, it really is terrible. All right, so let's ask it some questions. I got a couple here. All right, so what you'll see when and it's interesting. So this is what the page looks like. And you'll have to log in. You can go to OpenAI up here right at the top, chat.openai.com. You can go to that link, or you can go to openai.com. It's going to ask you to create an account. It's free, but you are going to have to give it things like your email address, and I believe you may have to give it your telephone number, so just be aware that you're providing some information. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. So this is the page as it stands. It just looks like this. It gives you some examples of the kinds of things that you can do. It talks about some of its capabilities and what kind of cool stuff it can do, and then it also talks about the limitations. And a lot of these are, see, there's the date, 2021. It only has information up to 2021. Anything after that, it hasn't loaded it or been trained on it, so it's old and out of date. So the question that Jennifer had was, or Steve had, let me do Steve's and then I'll do Jennifer's, was when will we see Chat GPT incorporated into commercial products? Now, again, interestingly, there are things that it feels are sensitive that it may not answer. For example, if you ask it questions about specific companies, a lot of times it may kick it back out and may not answer it. So we'll see what it says. All right. So this, when I hit enter, this is it responding in real time. So you can see exactly the answer there, and you could say something. So the interesting thing about ChatGPT is it's contextual. And so what that means is it remembers what you've already talked about. So you can literally, for something like this, you could go back and say, well, what is a virtual assistant? And it remembers that it answered virtual assistant in the previous paragraph, and then it will spit out this information. And it'll tell you kind of what a virtual assistant is. And you're like, oh, my goodness. That's really way too long, and I'll just say summarize. And it now summarizes it into a smaller amount of information. So and what I can do is put the answer in a bulleted list. And now it turns it into a bulleted list with summary of information for you. The other thing that you can do, and this is hysterical, is put the response into a list that could be understood by a 6-year-old. Virtual helpers are like robots you talk to on your phone. I'm not joking, y'all. This is insane, the kind of stuff that it can do. And it remembers all the stuff that's going on and what you've done previously. So again, this was a little bit of a joke because we kind of went down a strange rabbit hole. But the advantage is like if you wanted it to, so for example, let me do a new chat because I think Jennifer had a good question. So let's see. Yeah, what are and this would be specific to, so basically what you do is you just go up and you enter a new chat. Now you can do other things like this is, so just FYI, that right there, that's the question I asked that I put into the PowerPoint. Does that look familiar? It's the exact words. Literally asked it, what are some concerns about using Chat GPT? I love this thing. Absolutely bonkers. But so, and you'll see some of the others that I did here, like I asked it, like, can you create an employee, write a performance improvement plan for a call center agent who's not providing good customer service? And it literally does this. It tells you, identify the areas where the agent is struggling, set clear measurable goals, provide additional training. This is all correct. I mean, I'm not joking. And again, you could just take this as a baseline and edit it later, but it responded to this in real time. It was done in less than like 15 seconds, putting all this information out. And it's incredible. So you can take this information, copy it into a document, and do whatever, editing and updating you want that's maybe specific for your area, your line of work, your whatever, your company. It's just incredible. All right, so the new chat that we're going to do is for, all right, let me reload this. Okay, so the new chat was, what are some federal proposal best practices? So if you're reading this, it's understand the RFP, carefully review the request for proposal. Tailor your proposal to the specific requirements and evaluation criteria outlined in the RFP. This is all correct so far. I'm not kidding. So, the interesting thing is you can also get to limit the number, so you can say, please put it into 10 bullet points, and you can be really specific. But if you read through this and you've ever dealt with an RFP, a lot of these are completely valid. Cost estimates, and again, like imagine just saying, like, I've got a new employee that doesn't know how to deal with proposals, and we've got one that we've got to respond to. Here's a quick outline of the things that you need to get to be able to respond to these things. They're all good suggestions. Now they may not be complete, and you may have to add things to it, but that's one heck of a crazy response coming out of nowhere. So Steve Jerks asked, has ChatGPT evolved to being able to track my voice rate? Many of you here, I talk very quickly, so no, I doubt it. I tend to push the limits of voice to text all the time, ridiculously fast. So and the answers are absolutely bonkers. So teachers and things like that, that's a great point. They are already talking about this, and many of you have probably seen, even in schools now, they've already created AI detection algorithms that basically look over stuff that's been submitted and see what percentage it thinks is AI generated. It's already happening. People are literally turning in incredible things around. Like asking for it to generate, 500 word, synopsis of, Homer's Odyssey or something, and it'll do it. I mean, it doesn't have any problem, doing those kinds of things. Like, it's absolutely insane. We could do something like this. So, let's see. Let me do this real quick. All right. I can do this. Okay, so I wanted to see if I could get an example of an RFP that I could pull in. So I just grabbed this off of an example project description, okay? And so I'm just going to literally copy the text right off of this page. Basically, it's an example proposal, and then I will come over here, and we'll come back to Chat GPT. Then what I can do is you can do something like summarize, colon, and then you can paste the information. Now, I want you to see how much data is in here. I just asked it to summarize this. So you can see how much data is in there, and it literally immediately starts generating a summary. And so this kind of stuff, just from a program manager's perspective, if you're looking for things like new information and you want to get something quickly, like you want to summarize, like if you've ever used summary.com or Blinkist or some of these other ones that summarize entire books into a couple paragraphs, this is going to do it for you. You can dump this information in here, and like I was mentioning earlier, it will limit the amount that you can dump into it now, certainly more so than it did when I first started, I think, because I remember copy and pasting multiple pages into it and asking it to summarize it. But this is perfectly readable, and so if you go back to the original piece, it says the Rockville Pike Corridor neighborhood plan was adopted in 1989. The majority of the corridor was rezoned, right? And then you go down here to the summary, and it says the plan was adopted in 89 with the goal of promoting a mix of uses. So it's writing something new. And it tells you, basically a summary of this. So it rewrote it with new words and new sentence structures, and basically gave you a summary of it super quick. So Iron Chariot asked about zero shot. So, okay, so if you're talking about being able to utilize something with no learning, I think. So it's like it has something to do with it hasn't received any training. So some of that is happening where, so it's something about a live response. Let me take a look real quick. But I do know what you're talking about. I have seen something on that. And actually, let's do this. Let's ask Chat GPT. Can I get 10 bullet points on what zero shot is? Let's see what it does. Yeah, there you go. So zero shot learning is a machine learning technique that allows a model to recognize new objects in concepts it's never seen before. So it has a pre-trained model that's been trained on a large group of data labeled examples. So what's interesting here is this will relate to if you've ever done CAPTCHA. You've actually helped train models like this. So if you know the pictures that everybody hates, like, can you please click on all the photos that are stairs? They actually used a lot of that data and would sell it because it's a labeled photograph at that point. And so there's multiple ways to do this. So this is one way where it compares a particular example to its data set that it was trained on, and a lot of times they're specifically trained. So you may want to, I want it to find all the apples, I'll train it on a bunch of apples and not a bunch of bananas, that kind of thing. So it can understand and recognize these things. But also, with things like CAPTCHA, your ability to click and select on those things puts the labels on a lot of these items. So that's one way of doing it. There's also, with something like DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, as the name implies, they use a composition process for like the images where they have a picture and they will insert graininess over time, and it will make the picture less and less legible, and it'll literally go to the way all the way down to where it's basically almost no picture, it's just complete grain, and then it will ask it to rebuild that from scratch. That's what it does when it's generating a lot of these pictures. It takes these concepts like, hey, this is an apple, and it goes all the way back to the end here, and this is how you build up an apple, from almost random dots, and it does the same thing with many of the elements that you're asking it for. So I hope that helped. I'm not super expert in those pieces, but hopefully that's at least a little bit helpful. They have a bunch of different types of learning models for this. So yeah, this is 10 examples. So yeah, it's really cool. They have a lot of different ways that they do this. To deal with things like, how would an AI deal with a situation that it's not familiar with? Sometimes honestly, I've seen this in like battlefield simulations. So stuff like that, where it uses techniques and based on a previously trained list of things, and then responds to that. Boston AI, I think, uses elements of that too, but we'll see. Again, please don't understand I'm not an expert, but I hope that helps. All right. So watermarking. So this is really interesting. There are ways, and there are actually products in the marketplace today. So what Steve asked is there such a thing as watermarking GPT generated text so that people can know where it comes from? So two things. One is they have software now that is designed to identify AI generated text. Don't know how it does it, but it is actually really good at catching AI generated text. So you can put this is what I was talking about, the students, the teachers will have this AI thing, and they'll just plunk the document into it and ask it to check it for AI text, and I've actually seen it on videos where they'll put in a Chat GPT thing, and it'll hit like 90, 92, 94% of this is AI. Don't know how it does it, but it does it. But the other thing is that you asked a really good question, which is, how do I know the sources of the data that it used to give me this answer? So there are products out there now that can do some of this, and again, these are like products for businesses, so you'd have to basically go out and buy this capability, but a lot of it has to do with training on your own data sets. So like, for example, if I wanted to, I'm going to use the knowledge base example that I used before. So if you're familiar with IT, a lot of times, if you have a call center, then those agents will have information that's stored that they can access to answer questions. So it might tell them, hey, I'm having this problem with my computer. They can look up that problem and it'll tell you how to fix it. That's called a knowledge base. So the information and instructions are stored in this, and it can be huge. It can have tens of thousands of documents in it. You could actually, if it would be really great if you could take that, that knowledge base and just dump it into, a system like this, and then be able to search and say, well, how do I, reset a password on a Windows, device, and it can tell you how to do it. I asked it the other week. I have a little writing tablet that I use, sometimes for these presentations, and it wasn't syncing correctly, and I asked it how do I fix that, and it spit out answers, and the third one was the one that fixed it. But boy, that would be really cool. But also, though, it would be nice for the technician to know where that answer came from if they wanted to learn more about it. So a lot of times what these newer things will do is they will embed a link to the source document. So it'll say, hey, I got this information from this particular document. Now that to me is beneficial for a whole host of reasons, particularly down the line in like verifying where the information came from and making sure that it's probably true or accurate. I think all those things are super important. So there is a watermarking element somehow in AI generated text today that can be verified and identified through another program that's looking for that text. So it does something. There's something about it that it's able to figure out that it was AI generated. Now, this is where it gets insane, because you're in the battle of the bots now, because now they have specific applications that can take Chat GPT generated content and massage it so that it sounds more like a particular person speaking. I mean, it is insane the kinds of things that it can do. So there's this battle that's going to happen forever and continue to the end of time. So yeah, they can do those kinds of things. It's really cool. Is the information unique and predictable, or does it change? This is a great question. So it does. It changes a lot. So, for example, and there was a big discussion online about this. I was actually watching a podcast with some absolute geniuses on it that do this stuff for a living, and they were wondering, like, okay, well, if I asked it, if I asked it, so write me a limerick. I can't spell. How do you spell limerick? There you go. A limerick about a blue banana and banana. Can't spell. B-A-N-A-N-N-A-A. This only happens when you all are watching, you know that. About a blue banana and a cat. And this is interesting because you can see the dots, it kind of thinks. That could be for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes it's just absolutely bogged down. Sometimes you'll actually get a notification when you log in that the system is, like, overwhelmed. As many of you know, or have probably heard, Chat GPT was the most adopted IT technology in the history of the world. Like, there is some data online, and I don't have all the specific numbers, but it was like, Facebook reached 1 million users after X amount of time, and then Twitter reached 1 million users in half the time. ChatGPT had something like 1 million users in 5 days. So people are all over the place trying to get access to this. So write me a limerick about a blue banana and a cat. There once was a blue banana so sweet, but a cat thought it was a strange treat. He gave it a lick, and to his surprise quick, he found it quite delicious to eat. Brilliant. Love it. But, so to your question, if you copy that and do it again, or regenerate the response, and you ask it to do it again, then, see, it's similar, but not quite. You know what I mean? So that one started with, once was a blue banana, and then this one was a cat that was blue, which is funny because that's actually incorrect, right? We didn't say the cat was blue. So what it's doing is it's using the algorithms to basically generate the output, and it's usually unique. So one of the things that actually came up in some of the discussions I was having is like, well, what happens if you close this? You found what you want, and you accidentally close it. You're never going to be able to regenerate the same content again, right? And so what's interesting is in things like stable diffusion, where it generates an image, those images actually do have correlated data points that it can print out underneath it. And if you click those data points and have it redo the data points that are underneath it, it's a special, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically an identifier for the image. If you redo it on that specific thing, it'll come up really, really close. So it'll basically be identical. So the interesting thing, and this is for the conceptual nerds out there, is that in the stable diffusion space, this is going to be really crazy. The idea is that imagine an infinite library with every image ever possible. And basically what it's doing is it's going to a point in space and it's finding your image and it's retrieving it. It's not, necessarily, those images are already generated and it's able to pull it back. But that image has a specific location in the library and it can be retrieved anytime, the exact image. So that's a completely different thing from ChatGPT, but yeah, that'll blow your mind if you start thinking about how that whole thing works. So really kind of cool. Oh, Iron Chariot said you can submit text to ChatGPT and ask if it was AI written. Okay, this is great. Let's do that. This is why I these kinds of things. There's if you have a cool idea, please let me know too. So, was this written by an AI? I'll put a question mark and then I'll put it in there. Let's see if it does it. It knew it wrote it. I wonder if it knew it wrote it because it was in that chat. That's kind of cool. Let's try a new chat and ask it. So this basically should take it out of its contextual space. That was bonkers though, right? That it actually remembered that it had done the limerick, and it was funny because it referred to itself as me, which I find really funny too. That limerick was written by an AI me because it remembered it did it earlier. All right, so let's do a new chat and see if it will do it. Was this written by an AI? And maybe if it can tell that it is let's see. Oh, so it knew. So there's something about it. Again, like this is the cool part. I don't know, Iron Chariot, if you know what the issue is there and how it knew. I would love that. Oh gosh. So Jennifer asked a really funny one. Yeah, Iron Chariot said it was a good answer. That the previous ones they really were. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with it with the chat. So yeah, no need for tech writers. Yeah, you can do documents and all kinds of. So this is like, for example, if I wanted to, and Jennifer had an absolutely hilarious one. Can you write a thank you note in the voice of Snoop Dogg, who of course is incredible. Oh my gosh. I love Snoop Dogg. Doesn't that sound like Snoop Dogg? It would be totally something I could hear him say. Absolutely beautiful. I love it. I will not read it because I will not do it justice. I love me some Snoop Dogg. Absolutely hysterical. So anyway, so these were fun. I mean, these are kind of goofy things that you can do. But for example, like if I wanted to, so this will be really simple. Write me the Python code for a TikTok game that has red, white, and blue colors. So, and again, so the insane thing about this, right? Okay, so this is the Python code. It's generating it basically in real time, and it's telling you, how to choose colors, red, white, or blue, and it even gives you an option if you choose an invalid color. And what's incredible is it has an option right up here to copy the code. You can literally click it and paste it into a format where you could literally execute it. So. And what I'll do here is, I wonder if I can, so I'll ask it to explain each step. Explain what each step is doing. Oh my gosh, so it actually told you at the bottom what it's doing. All right, I didn't even see that. Y'all, you seeing this? Yeah, I mean, it's bonkers. So it basically will, and so if you're coding and you're not sure, like for example, if you had an error in step 2, you could literally have it, help you fix that particular one. So, Iron Chariot, ask it how it knows. I know. Do you know Snoop Dogg? I should ask it that because he's awesome. I mean, it's still going. So that's incredible. It literally told me, why it did the writing that it did and explained all the steps about it. So it's pretty insane. I think that's probably a pretty good, like you can actually ask it to write in Pig Latin. That was another one that I had it do. I asked it, what are the top 10 characteristics of a great program manager in bullet format? And it does those kinds of things. So I have not even scratched the surface of the capabilities of this thing. And you could literally spend all day doing this. But the reason that I was doing it for a program manager is because you can use this every day. If you need to brainstorm on something and you've got an idea but you don't remember, like I need to get 3 or 4 ideas about let me do this. What is the best new technology for call centers? It answered itself first. Yep, that's absolutely correct. Omnichannel communications, having the ability to use any kind of interface. I mean, right? So if you're seeing this and reading it, the answer are really good. So again, it may bring back incorrect stuff. You can definitely force it to fail. But it does some incredible stuff, and it can help you brainstorm and get some ideas. Like this was the one. So write a performance review for Steve, who has done a great job sorting grapes this quarter, and will be getting a raise. Let's see what it does. And again, what's interesting about this is that his dedication and hard work have been instrumental in ensuring our grape sorting operations have run smoothly, consistently demonstrated a strong work ethic and an attention to detail. I'm pleased to say that Steve's performance has been outstanding, and I'm happy to recommend him for a raise. Steve is a pleasure to work with. I mean, he is the best grape sorter we've got. I'm making light of this, but it just has to blow your mind that something like this is here. So, for example, if you wanted some ideas for, how to do something like this, or do performance reviews that take forever, and, you want to, get some ideas and suggestions, it's a really great way to do it. So yeah, it's pretty insane the way it can do, all of these different pieces. So again, as a program manager, learn it, please. If you're aspiring to be a program manager or getting into particularly the IT space, it's going to take over an enormous amount of things. So if you can, go out there, set up an account, start fiddling around with it, because what they're talking about, like I mentioned, in the future is that if you get a head start on it. So I mentioned this briefly a minute ago, prompt engineering. Okay, so this is a job now, which just boggles the mind. So writing a particular prompt to get the best possible output is now a thing. So particularly if you ever watch a video about DALL-E or any of the AI image generators, they have insane prompts that can be a paragraph long with all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's able to do the more prompts you have and the more specific you have, you're able to tweak that image to get almost exactly what you want. There are people that are already experts in this, and they are they generate prompts, and you can look up prompts online. Like you say something like, hey, I'd really like to have it generate a dog dancing in a tutu, and the types of prompts that you want, and you can actually have it generate something pretty close to that if you are a good prompt writer. And the same is true of Chat GPT. So it's got all kinds of stuff like suggestions on how to write these prompts. So if you get an opportunity, watch a video on it. They'll explain a lot of these things. But even if you don't know, you can literally ask it the most mundane questions, and it'll like I said, it'll do some incredible stuff on being able to help you get through your day a little bit faster. So I can't recommend it enough to try to learn it. So I hope this was helpful. So I've kept you all a little bit over. I try to only make about an hour long, but I am so thankful that you all showed up to talk and give some feedback tonight. I hope you're as excited as I am. Obviously, it kind of shows through that this kind of stuff to me is so cool and so game-changing. It's like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said something really, I think, brilliant. He's like, I feel like this is, the person standing at the internet, staring at the internet on 0 day, like the first day at the internet, and just getting a realization like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. And that's the way that I know I seem hyperbolic, but that's literally how I feel about this. Is this stuff is so, and I think the thing is, it's so far beyond where I thought we were. And I think that's what's freaking everybody out, is like everybody's used to AI being garbage, that this thing doing what it can do and just being really pretty good at it is just blowing everybody's minds. And the idea that this is happening so rapidly, they're coming out with so many different applications every week that even like YouTube can't keep up with how fast these things are progressing. And now everybody's involved. And as soon as that happens, Google is getting ready to drop their AI that they've been working on. And when you've got companies like that are in the mix, the game's going to change pretty quickly. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate that, and thank you all so much for stopping by. We'll have another one next Thursday if you're interested in stopping by around 7 o'clock. I thank each and every one of you for taking the time to hang out with me tonight and talk about Chat GPT. If you like the content, as Steve did, please consider subscribing. If you like the stream, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, please give it a thumbs down. If you got any suggestions for future episodes or questions that you'd like me to answer, please feel free to drop those in the comments. Thank you all so much for being with me tonight. I hope you have a fantastic week. Keep leading and keep being the best person you can be. Thanks.